Good evening. Now, there's only one real way to celebrate a birthday, especially a 21st, and that's in the company of friends. And when we started planning our celebrations, one of the first invitations went out to a man who has created some of the more memorable images here on Yorkshire television. Now, you might not recognise him in the street, perhaps, but you will certainly remember his work as a writer. And he'd only mentioned Beiderbecke, The Loner, Selwyn Froggatt, and that magnificent film, A Day in Summer. And you'll know I'm about to welcome Alan Plater. Well, Alan, you've only got to say the word Alan Plater, and immediately everyone also thinks of Hull.
Yes.
But, in fact, you weren't actually born in Hull. You were from the North East.
I was born in Jarrow. I'm a Geordie by birth and Yorkshire by adoption. The cute way I express it is that we stayed in Jarrow till the Depression was over, and we moved to Hull so as to be in good time for the Blitz. As we turned up in Hull in 1938-39. And I was educated there. So I claim dual nationality because that way you get twice as many jobs offered. I get offered Geordie things and Yorkshire things.
Right, and of course you say you're educated there, and what a team there was in Hull at that time, because it was a star-studded cast at your school, wasn't it?
Do you mean Hull or Rovers or City? Which do you mean?
Ah, well, I was thinking...
Our school, yes.
School.
Yes, we had a little cluster of people at our school, which was Kingston High School. It was myself, Tom Courtney and John Alderton in a kind of 4-year span. And I certainly, I mean, Tom and I have been great mates since those days, still probably my best friend in the world. And I guess we kind of fed off each other and shared our fantasies as adolescents. I'm going to be an actor, I'm going to be a writer, and dare tell anyone else. And slightly startled when it all turned out the way it did.
Yes. Is that, in fact, what you said as kids at school, that you wanted to be a writer and he wanted to be up front on the stage as an actor?
I think Tom and I had that kind of conversation, yes. I mean, the irony is that we've never actually worked together. We've had one or two false starts, but we'll keep on trying.
And was there a teacher at school who encouraged you? Most people owe a lot to their own particular teacher, did you?
Yeah, there was a fellow called John Large who was, I think, quite influential on a lot of us because he believed in the word and in the drama and in things like that. Yeah.
What did you write when you were a kid at school?
I wrote very embarrassing pieces for the school magazine, one or two which have survived because my sister has kept them, and they're really awful. But, I mean, the key thing was at age 14, 15, I started writing other than when ordered to do so. You know, I mean, you did the essays and all that, the compositions, but I think it would be about that time, 14, 15, when I wrote a piece for the school magazine because I wanted to do it, and that was quite a startling discovery.
There's also quite a thrill, I think, when you see your name in print. It says, by Alan Plater, and just that bit gets...
Still terrific, and it's the silly ones that live, you know. And the first one is always... I mean, the first piece I sold for money was to Punch in, I think, 1958, and that was wonderful. I've still got that one, and that embarrasses me as a piece of writing, but I got 15 guineas for it, and we spent 20 of them on a record player.
Now, of course, in those days, it's not easier now, goodness knows, to be a writer full-time, but in those days you couldn't just leave school and be a writer. So, in fact, you were something else, weren't you?
I trained as an architect. I spent 4 years at Newcastle University, except it didn't have university status at that time. It got it soon after I left. And I spent 4 years there, which is fine, except architecture was a 5-year course. But at the end of the 4th year, my professor said it would be better for me and for him and for the built environment if we parted company, as I failed all the exams. I mean, it was nothing exotic. It wasn't for smoking illicit substances or any of that stuff. It was just I didn't pass any of the exams, or not enough. So
it seems amazing, actually, that you've been in Hull all this time, and, as I say, we've been on the air for 7 years before you'd written anything for us. You'd written a lot for the BBC, of course. Z-Cars, we all remember Z-Cars, of course. In fact, didn't you create something of a record in Z-Cars by having the most number of scenes in an hour?
Yeah, I did an episode of Z-Cars in, I think, 1964-65, which had 103 studio scenes and 20 filmed inserts.
Within an hour?
Well, 50 minutes, I think, 50, 55 minutes. I claim to have invented Hill Street Blues, because it had 5 stories in it, and Hill Street has 5 stories, but I was there first.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's just start at the end, as it were, because one of the things that's really fresh in our mind is the Beiderbecke series. We've had 3 now. We've had The Affair, The Tapes, and latterly we've had the Beiderbecke Connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see about it in a sec. Just briefly tell us how this came about. Just set the scene for us.
Oh, it kind of drifted into being by accident. it had a precursor, a little series called Get Lost. And the first Beiderbecke series was going to be a sequel to Get Lost, but Alan Armstrong, who had played the lead, wasn't available. I think he was on Broadway and Nicholas Nickleby. And so we rejigged it and suddenly thought Jimmy Bolam, and then we thought Barbara Flynn, and suddenly we were in business.
Right, well, OK. Well, this, of course, is from The Connection, which is the last series, four delightful hours on a Sunday night we had earlier this year. So let's look back now at a little bit of the Beiderbecke Connection. It's the opening titles, in fact, of one of the episodes.
Is he a lodger?
Don't be silly. It's Trevor.
I took one look at you and I decided mug. And then I thought maybe cup and saucer.
Whereas I take one look at you and think, what the hell are you doing here?
Well, I found myself back in the north. Thought I'd call in and say hello. Nothing wrong with that, is there?
At 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, I phoned earlier and someone said you'd be back after midnight.
That would be our babysitter.
Oh, I see. Babysitter?
Yvonne.
Bright kid. Used to run protection for 5C.
But she hasn't looked back since she was deported from Holland.
If there's a babysitter, there mustn't be a baby, huh?
Without a baby, it's an expensive luxury.
And are you?
Yes. Trevor is the father of my child.
And Jill is the mother of my child.
Are you married?
No, we are probationary cohabs.
Spousal analogues.
Significant others.
Well, how are you?
I think the great charm of the whole series, all three series really, is that nothing really ever happens, does it?
As well, I mean, I don't normally agree with critics. Well, no, I sometimes agree. One critic said it was like a Tommy Cooper performance, that you keep expecting a trick to happen, but the trick never really happens. I mean, what I love, apart from the sheer joy of working with marvellous people like that, is the sense of there being no car crashes, no burning buildings, none of that garbage that inhabits so much of our screen so much of the time, and which, frankly, I find a bit boring. It's just about people being, it's people trying to live their lives. All they want to do is to be a couple of teachers and have some wood to teach woodwork and some books to teach English with, and get on with their jobs. And I mean, Jill also wants to save the planet Earth, but that's a hobby. And the world won't leave them alone and keeps moving into their living room.
Yeah, OK, but it's very witty dialogue. I'm sure school teachers at home are very witty indeed, but I mean, it is very, very tight, witty, crisp dialogue.
Well, yeah, but it's a joy writing it when it's going to be played like that.
Did you write it with those two actually in mind? When you sat down and wrote episode 1 on your typewriter, did you know that they were going to play it?
I mean, after the first series, yes. I mean, it became the team, and the team spreads out to the technical team as well, and to Frank Ricotti, who did the music and got a BAFTA award for it, which was wonderful.
Yes, well, of course, this reflects, doesn't it, another great interest of yours, your personal interest, which is jazz.
Managed to drag it in this quickly, you see. Yes, I mean, the first impression when I look at that clip is I hear that lovely trombone playing by Don Lusher. I think, there's Don, and then at other times you hear Kenny Baker and the rest of the guys in the band. And that's, yeah, I mean, jazz is a lifelong obsession. And I think when you get a little older and wiser in the ways of the business, I just use it as a way of indulging myself. One of the ways of indulging myself is to write something where we can have plenty of nice music and where the guys can have a blow. And
so is there a bit of you in Trevor, and not only the love of music, but also his wry way of looking at the world?
I think so. I keep quoting critics, but another critic once said, oh, my heroes tend to have a kind of crumpled melancholy about them, and I think that's quite a shrewd observation. But yeah, Trevor is the kind of personal me, and Jill is the political me, the social political me.
Do you think there's any more you can squeeze out of that situation? I mean, if I've seen one lunchtime scene in the school, with them all sitting around, all the depressed schoolmasters, I mean, do you think, how many more of those sort of scenes